The Media Project. Evolve Rutland is an organization created by Far Vision founders Kiki McShane, Chris Fucci, and William Kelly to focus on prioritizing, developing, and celebrating women leaders in our community.
We believe that when women take leadership roles in communities, start and sustain businesses, and sit on professional boards of directors, the economy improves and communities change for the better. We advocate for fair treatment across the gender spectrum in all business scenarios, including equal compensation, family and medical leave, and equal opportunity for advancement.
Evolve Rutland is continuously working to expand its footprint in the Rutland, Vermont region in order to advocate for, connect, and teach women and non-binary leaders, otherwise referred to as ACT. The funding for Evolve Rutland services has been through private investment of supporters in the community. Join the movement by making your tax-deductible donation and learn more on how you can get involved at farvisionconsulting.com/evolve-rutland.
Howdy, folks. This is your host, Scott M. Graves, for another SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast, where we talk about the intersections between economics, urbanism, and culture. We are talking today with my good friends, John DiCicco, Ph.D., and Robert Cuomo. They are the authors of the book Authentic Leader and developers of the program Authentic Leader, and we're here today to talk a little bit about that. They will soon be partnering with our project here in Startup Rutland, in Rutland, Vermont, USA. I'm, of course, talking about the program where we are parsing out the best ways to redevelop a post-industrial economy with innovation for rural Vermont, USA. Gentlemen, how are you doing this morning?
I'll be doing even better if the Celtics had won, but we can't complain. Take one day at a time, and I'll have some comments later about how Rutland, Vermont can learn something from the Authentic Leader that we'll give to the Celtics as well. So I'll let that tidbit out there, and I'll get to it later.
And John, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Very much looking forward to working with you, Scott. One of the things that intrigues me about Rutland is it's all about innovation. It's all about people leading, understanding why they lead, how they lead, and the gift and talents we all have if we can bring them out through education.
Before I get to yet another salient point, I just want to say we all are mourning the loss for the Celtics simply because we're all, native Massachusettsans, even though one of us has abdicated to northern climes, I guess is the way I'd say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's dive right into that, John. Maybe first would be interesting to me after your comment is talk a little bit about what you perceive as sort of the definition of innovation. Is that a broader definition or is it very specific?
Actually, it's a broader definition. One of the things about authentic leadership, and both Dr. Cuomo and I have discovered, is that leadership is an evolution. It's a continuance of learning. It's a continuance of understanding how each one of us plays a role in a very vital part of what we do as leaders. So innovation means having the ability to think out of the box, not just when you plan contingently, but also when unforeseen circumstances arise and you have to make decisions based on not just your skill set, but your ability to be able to be creative, not just understanding the problem, but being able to work the problem.
What's actually interesting to me about this is that if you could put 10 different professionals in a room, and I asked that same question, your mind went immediately to the human and business ecosystem side of innovation, right? Where so many others, because we're so focused on things, right? We're all about it. So for most people, when they think about innovation, they think about a thing, a machine, right? This machine is going to make it all better. It's going to solve a problem, right? And this is one of the great things about the program. I'm wondering, Bob, if you could take that now and just sort of define for people a little bit more what authentic leader is first, and then we'll maybe talk a little bit about what it's going to do, what it does.
Yeah, as a nexus to that, Scott, I would say that innovation is really how one reacts to new challenges which are unexpected. To me, the key of the Authentic Leader brand, where I think we can help start up Rutland, is that we are focused on creating an atmosphere, creating a culture for successful decision making. What that means is that what you want to do is infuse into an organization a way of looking at things that will lead them to be successful in what they're doing. Now, let me come back to the sports analogy that I mentioned yesterday, earlier in our discussion this morning. If you look at the landscape of sports, the New York Yankees have a brand. The Boston Celtics had a brand up to now, and it was a strong brand. The New England Patriots have a brand. Edmonton Oilers have a brand. What does that say? That says that when you infuse that culture or that brand into an organization, people act differently. You put a person who is a retread on the Celtics, all of a sudden, they are more performing than they ever did when they were with another team. So, I mean, that is, to me, crucial, that the Authentic Leader brand really is a cultural infusion into an organization, which makes them think about things in a risk-reward framework. You know, the key to success in any business, in my view, is risk-reward. You don't take any risks, you get no rewards. And we get examples of that. Bill Gates took a risk, got a reward. Steve Jobs, same way. Walt Disney was the same way. So we can go on and on. But essentially, it comes down to what the Authentic Leader is going to try to do is to help your clients in Rutland, Vermont, and you have a nice cross-section of clients already, is try to infuse into those organizations a way of thinking which will, A, allow them to increase their profitability, also stay consistent with social welfare, and by doing both of those things, be sustainable in the long term. So that's my kind of bird's eye view as to what we think we can do with the Authentic Leader brand to help out Rutland, Vermont.
There's another key element to it, though, isn't there? And that is finding the correct strategic and legal and moral path in a world, a sort of business legal structure world that can often create complexity that makes it difficult to make decisions. And whether it's John or Bob, I'm wondering if you could next sort of take that at first by offering context. What do I mean by sort of complex structures in modern business that like we see in innovation realms of biotech, med tech, outside of the medical arts, any sort of software development companies, where you have stakeholders, you have board members, you have your C-suite, you have other management team members. Talk a little bit to that, maybe, John.
That talks to the narrative in the Authentic Leader, Scott, and you hit it right on the head. That's why I put in a pharmaceutical company that had many challenges. There were scandals. And of course, everyone was trying, and all of the stakeholders, good or bad, were trying to hide behind legal protection, if you will. And it was only to focus on their own personal needs and their profitability. So the thing is, when I had come up with that character, Dr. Fringe, who was a medical genius, had spent most of her life researching good stuff, she got entangled in making money, but for the wrong reasons, because it's a quick fix. What authentic leadership is about is looking at the legal, but also looking at the moral. So the character, Lynn Ann Marconi, she was caught between those two worlds. Yeah. When reading the book, you would see that Marconi had a business partner developing into a personal relationship, had a child with this person. And if you will, politics looks at this now as far left and far right. She's right in the middle, but she also had a moral compass. And she's trying to get her business partner and her spouse into thinking about the moral compass. In industry right now, this is what we're facing. We're facing this with organizations that really need to think about why they're doing what they're doing. Leadership is an evolution, a continuum. Josh Keating in the book has a lot to learn, not just about being a manager, but also being a leader.
And this is what's so fascinating and invigorating about the book is there's a couple of things there we can unpack. So one example that really spoke to me the first time I read through the book is that there's no ambiguity, because we have the benefit of hindsight, right? We're reading after things happened. There's no moral ambiguity. You can clearly see what's right and wrong, but the book actually takes us through how people came to the decisions they made and really forces you to say, well, wait a minute, if I was in the same situation, again, when you have a complex set of stakeholders of various kinds that are part of a business's ecosystem, and in fact, you have people that are floating from one group within that ecosystem to another, right? People who are on the board suddenly become consultants to the organization and are no longer on the board. There are timely decisions, I'll say, that are made relatively quickly. And there's a whole bunch of examples in the book where people aren't intending to be crooks, right? But they actually break the law. And only in hindsight do they realize, oh, yeah, by doing what I was doing, I actually was either skirting close to the edge of breaking the law or actually, in fact, broke the law or created some other type of conflict of interest. And that's one of the great benefits of the book is this idea that, like, for anybody that's building an innovation-based business that may involve this kind of legal structure, you're faced with this all the time, every day.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not as simple as having a moral compass. It's being able to ask these questions before you actually sort of get into the day-to-day operations, I guess is maybe the way to describe it.
Evolve Rutland recognizes women in business leadership in Rutland, Vermont. Here's founder Kiki McShane with the basics for our upcoming event.
So July 13th, Evolve Rutland, in 2023, we're going to be celebrating women in Rutland, Vermont with the theme of Act Now, Be Great. And it'll be July 13th at the Hub, 67 Merchants Row from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Up here on the second floor.
Up on the second floor.
Evolve Rutland specifically was created as an event, and it was created to recognize women in business because there was a dearth of recognition for women in business, though they lead and have led a multiplicity of business entities here in town. Right?
Yes. So it's women in business or women that lead or have a leadership position in their company. And we are the only public acknowledgement of women, an event just for acknowledging women in leadership roles in Rutland County.
And so, like so many other places in the country, it's just not something people thought of, I guess. That's the polite way of saying it.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Like,
it wasn't there. So
there's plenty of women actually leading major institutions in the area, but they just weren't being duly recognized.
And they may be recognized for their accomplishments within their organization or with their company, but nobody in the community was saying, let's have an event to just do this.
Now, as of late, you have been discussing with the staff at Startup Rutland about the ways that Evolve Rutland could become, exist with some permanency, I guess you could say, and also just itself evolve.
Yes.
So it's not just a name.
No, it's not, because that's where we are right now, that we're ready to go into our next iteration of what we want to do, what we should be doing, bringing more of an active role in our community. And we have been active, but it has to kind of gear up
Right.
ratchet up to the next level.
You're one of the founders, along with Chris Fucci.
I am.
What would this organization, beyond just an event to recognize women leaders in business, what would this look like long term, in your personal estimation, that would add to its meaningfulness?
We're purposely not defining exactly what it's going to look like. We think there's a challenge right now to identify what it could look like and to use the example of things we've accomplished in the past, but really to focus, where are we now? What is it that our community needs? And how can we address that? And we know that there's a lot of people in the community that would be interested in participating. And so we want to grasp that energy, we want to grasp that need for change, and we want to say, what can the design look like? So we're going to present the challenge, and we're hoping that people are going to step up to it.
Which is to say that we're looking for people to offer their feedback, actively offer their feedback over a meaningful enough period of time that we get a true sense for what individuals and institutions as well would consider. I mean, in my mind, it looks something like there's more long-term programming of some kind that's happening, not just a singular event, but there's ways of engaging.
So
people.
we have done programming, and that's not something to be dismissed, but we want to make sure that the foundation is laid with the idea of permanence. It's not just a wave. It's not just a fad. It's not just something like, oh, here's the next thing that we could be talking about to do with change, but really spend some time in creating that foundation and putting all of our good efforts and doing good work to make sure that it's something that's going to last. Because this community, I mean, you're a part of the example of this. This community is really poised and is at the same time in the process of changing. And so we want to make sure that that's something that lasts and produces results.
2022 honoree Jeanette Langston, Executive Director of Social Tinkering, explained how she came to know Evolve and how her team is getting more involved in Evolve's future.
I'm shocked and honored, and so that's how Kiki and I got to know each other a little more. And then, this year, Lakia Batista Sanchez had called me up and said, "Hey, I ran into Kiki, and she said they weren't going to be able to do it this year, and we got to do something. We got to help her." So, just called up Kiki and said, "Hey, how can we help? I know we've talked about working together at some point with our women's program that we want to start at Social Tinkering. How can we help to make this happen this year still?"
Here's honoree Lakia Batista Sanchez on what makes Evolve Rutland's recognition of women leadership important to the community at large.
It is important because it gives the younger generation opportunity to see where they can go. It gives them motivation to be, to strive for greatness, whereas sometimes they don't feel like they can be great. Mm-hmm. So being able to do this on a annual basis and show, it gives them the motivation to strive going forward, and they see that they can put all their effort into it and become great as well.
Find out more regarding the July 13th annual event at farvisionconsulting.com/evolve-Rutland.
Yeah, to me, the value of the book is simply to indicate that to really be successful, you have to engage in introspection. You look at the characters in the book. When we do the questions to ponder and lessons learned, we see how a particular person, a leader, has reacted to a certain situation. Then we ask the reader of the book to say, if you were faced with this circumstance, how would you have handled it? Now, a lot of this comes down, Scott, to me, it's situational ethics. And what it really indicates, there's no absolute. Sometimes nothing is absolute in terms of right or wrong, but you may make a decision which is really not per se pure, but in the long run, we're going to get to where we want to go. For a firm to be successful, they have to make profits. But if they're going to solve common problems, they have to make things affordable to the customer so that ultimately the industry and indeed the firm is sustainable. So it's the introspection of the the system that we're kind of breeding through the authentic leader that's important, and that leads to the workshops. Ultimately, what we've done is we've got in the authentic leader, we got 15 chapters, we get 19 in differencia, and indeed, as we've indicated to you and to others, you can pick basically a chapter and say, this chapter really addresses the issues that this firm is facing, and here is a workshop that will allow you to go through the process to tailor, to customize an approach to address your problem. So again, the key is customization through identifying characters. And I think John has done it so well in terms of developing Josh Keating, because the guy, when he starts differential, when he gets into that book, I'll tell you, he is in bad shape. But we're tracing out how he can become a better leader. And so I guess I would say that the authentic leadership is not an absolute. It's a concept. It's got degrees of gradation, and in the long term, if one is successful, they will be able to improve themselves. And I think the workshops will help.
Just for clarification, this particular program focuses on the authentic leader. And Dr. Cuomo was mentioning differencia, which a lot of us may not know about. Differencia is the follow-up book, which will be coming out very shortly on the authentic leader. It continues the narrative with the two characters and how they're evolving in a new company and their challenges. But that's coming out pretty soon. We can discuss that as we evolve.
So let's talk about the program a little bit. The first thing I want to ask, and one of you can choose who wants to take it, or both. Did you set out to write a book, and then out of that came a program consisting of workshops? Or was it your intention from the beginning that, well, we're going to write this book or a series of books that are the tools for workshops to, to sort of infuse the experience of leadership training with our program?
You're really talking to how Bob and I got together. We're both ex-administrators in the academic setting, professors, and we worked in corporate America. I just picked up the phone one day, a few years after I stopped teaching at Curry, and I said to, that's Curry College, and I said to Dr. Cuomo, hey, would you like to write a book? And he goes, okay. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but I'm just giving you the short, long and short of it.
And the rest.
And then we wrote the book on the authentic leader.
Yeah.
We decided we loved doing this so much, we wanted to give back to a lot of what we learned over a half century, combined, that is. And I said, hey, Bob, let's form an LLC. Let's go out and really share a lot of what we wrote in our book with companies, corporate and academic venues. And he said, okay, let's do it. So almost a year ago, we formed the LLC. And then I said, hey, this is working so well. We love the authentic leader. Let's evolve the characters. So I started writing Differencia. That happened. Now we're actually going to a third book, but I'm not even getting into that now. But that's how it worked with us.
Got it. Yeah. The evolution of it. And I mean, it's interesting to add this, right, to like in our case, because we're a business incubator, this we're seeing as sort of the character building portion of what we're doing. So much of what we do is tactile and related to finance and all of the fundamentals that are necessary to get a business off the ground. But it's our feeling here at Startup Rutland that another part that's often missing is giving people, so for quote unquote soft skills, people just can't put anything they can't put under finance, human resources, strategy, marketing. We just put this under soft skills, right? And this actually, beyond just talking about moral issues in business, like an ethics course per se, this actually gives us, both in style and substance, a forum, right, for discussion, because it seems to me you learn first of all, you need to learn concrete sort of skills that each person can develop on their own. Everybody's personality and leadership traits are different, therefore, right? So this gives you sort of, skills suggested that you can hone over time. They're questions you need to be asking yourself at every step of the way as the business develops that remind you of, hey, this thing I'm about to do, right? Not only is it legal, but is it morally the best thing, right? Because let's say something's legal, but it's morally questionable, right? These things often, and the book does a good job of this, I feel, they get amplified over time. They might not even necessarily be a lie to the general public, but if you lie to yourself, oh, you know what? There's no law stopping us from doing this particular thing, and it's not necessarily illegal, and it probably won't hurt anybody, so we're going to do it. It's the easier way to go. It's quicker, right? Yeah. This is often quick decisions that are short term are often the ones that they get the wrong part of them gets amplified over time until they're too big a problem for you to deal with. And in the book, this is where people start hiding things, right? Now they're starting to actually break laws, right?
Yes.
Is that a good characterization, or am I just remembering things that didn't happen when I read it?
No, I think it is. It's a very good characterization. And what I would supplement that by saying that the beauty of differentia is that it allows us to look at the evolution of the character of Josh. After you finish The Authentic Leader, Josh is in bad shape. He cannot think beyond his nose. He's only concerned about himself and not what's going on around him. He doesn't care. I've got 11,000 employees. Look, Lynn is sick. Concentrate on that, but you got other people to take care of. And because of differentia, we are able to trace out the evolution. Josh has got a high TQ, very bad EQ. Basically, it's indicating that, he doesn't know what's going on around him. He doesn't have a clue. So that sets the stage for us to be able to say he can improve in a lot of ways. And that is the beauty of that, because a lot of us in our careers have had failures. But what you do is you learn from those failures and you develop skills to overcome them over time. I always like to say it's attitude, not aptitude, determines altitude. Basically, which means that if you've got a goal long term, what you need to do is to concentrate on achieving that. And success is the key to failure. Quite often when I teach, I say, success is the key to failure. You go on for an hour and a half and say, I've learned more from my mistakes than my successes. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I would supplement that by saying that we want to look at the evolution of the characters. And, I am big on situational ethics, because quite often John and I will say, is it all right to tell a lie, a white lie? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is better. For example, when if Lynn was really going to have a hard time surviving, should they have said, well, this is bad. She'll never get it done. So what do? You say, well, she's a strong person. It'll get better. Things will work out well. And as the book evolves, it does work out well. So that would be my take. But I agree with you. You have to really consider whether a decision is right or wrong in a certain circumstance. And sometimes there's no absolute.
Are you ultimately giving people permission to look within and go on this journey? Like, you're proactively saying you've got to evolve your sensibilities for this in order to achieve better leadership, which means sometimes going down a very challenging and difficult. It's like everybody's own personal leadership saga.
Honestly, this is where we need clarification. And Bob and I often will bounce things off of each other. We'll agree to disagree on certain things. Personally, lying in any capacity needs to take on a new form, a new identification. It isn't about lying. It's about facing a dilemma where you have to make a decision that may not be favorable. For example, you go in and you go to see the doctor gives you a report that you don't like. So the doctor gestures and says, well, I'm telling you the way it is. However, I can help you get through this. And I think that's what Dr. Cuomo is saying. What he's saying is, you don't really flour something, but what you actually do is you put a little sugar in the awful recipe. And as they said, in the Mary Poppins musical, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. And I think that's what's really important here. You need the medicine to correct the problem or to make it feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
But
Making
to
the
say
tough
to
but
someone,
honest decision that needs to be made
it's an
and implemented.
honest decision,
Yeah.
but it's flavoring it a little.
You don't lie. What you do is put a positive spin on something that
There you go.
legitimately can have a positive end. You do not catastrophize, which is a tendency to hold back any entrepreneur. Because if you're going to be a catastrophizer, you're not going to take any risk at all, because you're going to look at what won't happen instead of what might happen. And I think that's important, Scott, for what you're trying to do. I think, in my humble opinion, with your clients, is to get them to think outside of the box and say, there's an opportunity cost to not doing anything. And quite often I say, change is always less risky than the status quo, because the world is constantly changing and things are evolving. So
risk taking with a moral compass, right? Mistakes will be made, risks will be taken, and there'll be failure. But you can always come back from that. I mean, part of being part of an incubator is you help people, survive for another round, right? Of giving it a go. But in the first place, having the right combination of risk taking, educated risk taking with a moral compass, so that in the first place, you're always trying to come up with solutions that are good for the general public. They're good for your team. They're good for any future employees. You've got to have the best intentions for people at heart. And then you need to implement things where you're re-asking yourself those same core questions every time.
You may make a mistake. You may make mistakes along the way. As Wayne Gretzky says, you miss 100% of the shots you've never taken. You learn from I've learned more from my mistakes than my successes, because I see what works and what doesn't work. And I always walk away with a takeaway. It's a positive thing. And so, again, you can't be afraid to take that risk, because if you don't, you're going to be mired in mediocrity.
Well, listen, guys, we are excited to have the Authentic Leader program be implemented up here later this year, 2023. As part of our various programming at Startup Rutland. I'll just remind people listening that you can partake in the program through Startup Rutland, both as a member of the general public and the business community, but also it'll be a part of our long-term cohort, which we'll be making announcements later on this year for that. People who are here long-term incubating, and all kinds of good stuff coming up. And we'll have on the episode page for this episode, for Startup Rutland's page and the Hub Coworks, information on the Authentic Leader and where people can find and engage with you guys, and also buy the book. But I want you to mention it before we completely wrap up here. So one of you take where people can find the Authentic Leader.
You can find the Authentic Leader on Amazon's website in paperback. It's also available in Kindle, and it's also available in audio. We're looking forward to you reading the book and getting involved in our program.
John DiCicco, Ph.D., and Robert Cuomo, it is an absolute pleasure having you here today.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, Scott. I think the Authentic Leader brand can do a lot to infuse into your project and your clients the optimism that goes with considering all possibilities and not being afraid to take calculated risks. Again, the old risk-reward trade-off. No risk, no reward. And your incubation system there that you're developing, I think, is going to be a tremendous boon to not only Vermont, but indeed to New England, and perhaps even beyond that, in terms of the universality of what we can accomplish. So thank you for the opportunity, and we are looking forward to working with you.
SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast is a production of M the Media Project and SM Graves Associates. Learn more at smgravesassociates.com.